Going live. I'm live. Wow, that was quick. Not used to that. Usually it rolls around for quite a while before it comes on. I was fixing my hair. All right. Hey, this Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Here's the Anyone Can Farm Experience live chat Tuesday night edition. Today is the 20th of May, 2025. I'm coming to you from lovely Marion, Michigan. If you don't know where that is, it's in northern lower Michigan. Doesn't feel like spring to me. Today, our high temperature was 50. About 50 right now. I just came in. I'll tell you what, we had a late lunch, like a 3 o'clock lunch. We had kind of an interruption. I had to load some pigs out for a guy. And we sat in the warmth and ate. And then I really didn't feel like going back out. You know, I just didn't. It's overcast and it's cold. And I kind of came in the house, sat with Jill here by the computer, watched a couple YouTube videos, did some research, actually, is what it was. And I did not go out until 7 or about 6:30. I went out at 6:30 to do my chores. And I tried to get everything done because I don't feel like I'm going to want to go out after I finish up here. But I will. I have to go out and feed the calves. But not a problem. I'm so glad that it's spring and a lot of things change. The place is constantly changing. When the green grass starts coming up, the cows go out on grass, and there's just a calm that goes over the whole place because they are so happy. And I can look out and I can see them, tails going back and forth, and they're just happy people. So that really is nice. Things don't really change much with pigs. We got a bunch of little ones on the ground that I'm wanting to sell. So if anybody needs any Mangalitsa feeders or breeding animals, I'm your guy. Also, milk shares, herd shares. I need some help with that if y'all can help me with that. There was a time when we had a pretty long list of people who wanted milk, but we didn't have the milk for them. Now we've got the milk and our list is caught up. So, you know, I could accommodate some more people, and I'd really like to do that. It's kind of a neat thing, actually. I love this dairying thing. I'm having such a good time with this. I look forward to it, getting up in the morning and just going out there. And I'm more of like a facilities guy. I like to see the overall picture and see how, well, you know, if we had a two-wheeled cart and we could wheel the jars over in the cart and just fill them on the cart and then wheel them over to the cooler, we could save a lot of steps. And today I had this brainstorm. They make these pumps. It's a 110 volt pump or 120 volt pump. And you can, has a valve on the front with an electric switch. So you can put one end in the bucket, the milk bucket, when we bring in, sometimes we're bringing in 7 gallons at a time. And it's pretty heavy. And we've been lifting it up and putting it in a pitcher, and then taking the pitcher and filling the individual jars through a strainer. And so you can fill 2 jars with each pitcher load. And then you have to stop, put it down, pick up the bucket, fill it again. It's hard for the kids. But with a pump, I'd be able to just put it in and then just go to each jar and go, and you can put a filter on the end. So it filters any debris that you don't want going in the jars. So that'd be kind of nice. And I'm looking around for those, and they're not all that expensive. And then easy to clean. You just yank the filter off, and then run solution through it. Like it'd be like a solution, an acid wash once a week, and then just mild soap and water, and maybe hot water through it just to sanitize it, and then probably run hot water through it before you start off in the morning. So that would save us a lot of time. But anyway, there's just a million things like that when you're doing it, you say, I could save some time here. by doing it this way. And it's pretty exciting. And then at the end, when you have all the jars lined up on the table, kind of like it's sort of like a trophy. You know, if you have 17 jars lined up there on the table, or no, 17 gallons in half-gallon jars, so that would be what, 34, or whatever. Yeah, whatever. It's kind of neat because you say that represent X amount of dollars. And then you say, well, in 5 days or in 7 days, that would be this much. In a month, in a year, in 10 years, you know, so it's fun because you directly see the fruits of your labor, which is pretty neat. It's pretty neat. I got to open the door here real quick. I am dressed to the outside. Believe it or not, I broke out the long underwear this morning. Believe it or not. I went out and did my cold plunge, and my body is it's getting used to the warmer weather. And then it was like 41 degrees this morning, but it felt really cold. So after I did my plunge, I came in. I didn't actually do a water plunge this morning, actually. If my wife is listening to me, I want to be perfectly honest. I did an air plunge. Yeah, I didn't want to get in the water this morning. I just didn't, and so I didn't. Usually I do, and I do, but today I didn't, so I didn't. And, you know, my day was different because of that. But maybe I needed a rest day. Maybe. Today's Tuesday. We went to and this is what I want to talk about tonight, and I would appreciate some input on this, actually. We went to the Mitten Homestead Conference, and it's called Mitten because the state of Michigan looks like a mitten. And by the way, I live right here at the base of the ring finger. And it was really good. It started up last year. Mina Postman and Tiffany Doolittle set it up and called me out of the blue and said, would you like to help? And I'd sure love to. It was in the winter, not this winter, but last winter. And not this past winter, but the one before that. And, you know, you don't know what to expect. I don't like doing a lot of stuff like that, but this is my state. And it made sense to check it out. You know, I like going to them. But honestly, at this stage of my farming career, there is not a lot of new stuff. And so care of, you know, a small goat herd doesn't really interest me that much, you know. So I just, you know, and there's a lot of beginner level stuff like that. There was some higher level stuff that was really good. I thought really good. There was a couple guys there that really were talking higher level stuff. Couple 3 that I went to that were really good. Don't remember their names. Matt, Luke, and the woman's name, I don't remember her name. I talked with her the most. I really liked her. She was a you know, a goat person, and a rabbit person. But what she did was she would comb them and she would get the fibers out. And then she would take those fibers and spin them and then eventually knit those fibers. And you could put them on a loom, I suppose. And I just thought that was really neat. It's sort of like milking in a way. The animal, you're walking side by side with the animal, and they're providing you something, you're providing them something. You know, it's different than walking side by side with an animal and then eventually you shoot them. You know, and I know there's a place for that, but I really did enjoy the fiber presentation. That was good. And then there was another one about alternate medical things, and the guy talked about DMSO and several other things like that. And Jill even got some of the stuff from him, and we're researching it. It's going to fit in really good with what we're doing. And then the other guy was grazing, intensive grazing. His name was Luke. I ate lunch with him. That was pretty interesting what he's doing. He's in the beef industry, but grass-fed beef, and he's doing some pretty neat things. So I had a really good time, and then I was picked for the inspirational speaker Friday night. So I was talking to all the presenters, and then some of the vendors. Some of the vendors sneaked in. They had a pretty nice dinner for us. It was really nice. Had a whale of a time. Just hanging out with people that are into the same type of things that I'm into. And that's really fun. And then we took the maiden voyage with the motorhome. We were supposed to leave Thursday, actually, but when I had it all packed up, tried to get a start, and it wouldn't start. It just wouldn't start. Give it a shot of ether, and it would start, but then it would die. So we had to do a couple things. We pulled fuel line off there at the carburetor, and it was just going peep, 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 peep. And so we traced it back, and we found a line that was rotted and cut. And so we replaced that line, tried it again, went back. So we got all the way back to the tank. The motorhome has two tanks, and the tank in the back was the one that was hooked up to the boost pump. And the tank in the middle, apparently they weren't using it because there's no pump on the engine on this 460. There's no pump. So they had an electric boost pump, and the fitting that goes in the top of the tank, you couldn't get at it to change the line. You have to drop the tank. So that wasn't something that we were going to do Thursday night, after dark. Although we were trying to get out on time. So we just went to the number 1 tank, which is the main tank, and hooked the boost pump up there and changed a couple lines, and voila, she kicked right over. And so that was the maiden voyage down there. It was so going down, and didn't have any problems going down. The one thing, we didn't have a fuel gauge on that tank, so we didn't know how much fuel we had. So we stopped when we were about there and topped it off and did a calculation on how much mileage we were getting, and it looks like we're getting 8 or 9 miles to the gallon on that motorhome, which I guess is about right. I mean, that's what Jill said. I don't know how she knows, but she knows everything. So then when we got to the campsite, I put it in position, what I thought was a good position. And then it's got a power cord on it. The motorhome does. And you pull it out and you can plug it in. And I was a couple feet short. So I went to start it up again, and click, click. What's this? Dead battery. What's going on? So anyway, we decided, let's just leave it where it is, and we'll use an extension cord. So we did. And kind of fretted about that the first night, which would Friday night. Kind of fretted about that a little bit as we were trying to get to sleep. And then the next day, Mina's husband, Shane, loaned me a battery charger, and we put the battery charger on and charged it for a few hours, and then went back to start it. And again, click, click. Oh no, what's going on? Maybe the solenoid shot. So I jumped the solenoid, and it was in gear. it was in reverse. So on old cars, if you leave them in gear, it's got a safety switch on it, so you can't start it. And I didn't put it in reverse. I didn't put it in park when I stopped it, when I shut it off, you know? Anyway, so that's all it was. I didn't have a dead battery at all. I just had operator error. And that's what it takes when you get equipment that's new. Even if it was a brand new motorhome, there's going to be things on it that you just aren't used to, and you got to get used to it. And the only way to get used to it is to just operate it. Just make the time to get it started, go for a little ride, stop, have lunch, and then come back. And then you start learning all the little things. Something else happened that was kind of interesting. It's got a manual choke on the carburetor. Maybe this isn't of major interest to a lot of you guys, but and we had to take a detour off of the highway. They're doing a bridge repair, and we're on this road that was really, and it was really, really shaking the motorhome. And what it did is it pushed that manual choke into the half choke position without me knowing it, and it stalled. Like, oh no, we're on a back road and now we've stalled. But I gave it a little gas, cranked it again, started right up. So I didn't want to go too slow because I thought something's wrong here. It's idling way too low. And the first stop sign that we got to, it almost stalled, and then I gave it gas and it took off, but a great big puff of smoke came out the back. And I thought, what is that? It wasn't blue, which would be oil, and it wasn't white, which would be coolant. If it's coolant, that's bad. If it's oil, that's bad too, but I couldn't see oil because it runs really good. And, it's a Ford 460, which is a really durable engine. So I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I did it again. And then I got it home. It was running fine so long as we were at higher RPM. And then when we pulled in and I took my foot off, it stalled. So it was the choke, but I didn't realize it at the time. It was a long day. We got home Saturday, like 9 o'clock. And I was fretting about it again. But when I woke up in the morning, I was like, oh, I know what it is. It's the choke. And the thing with the choke is, I got this, there was no linkage between the choke cable and the choke lever on the carburetor. And it's an old Edelbrock carburetor. And, I just didn't have time really to hook it up, but you really need it for early morning starts. And so that's what it was. So that puff of smoke that came out the back was actually atomized fuel. So lucky for me that it didn't light off, in the exhaust pipe, muffler, and tailpipe, because if it had, I've had that happen on Fords before. My pickup is a 74, so it's 2 years older than this one. And it'll just open that muffler up like a can. Poof! Just blow it open like a can. And so it didn't happen, so we were lucky. A lot of things could have happened that didn't happen. And that's just the way it is with older equipment. You have to use it and figure out the quirks and stuff. Another thing happened. We pulled out the awning off the side when we got there. Tommy DeClerc helped me pull it out and set it up, and then we sat under it in lawn chairs. Oh, isn't this great? But we didn't have time to really enjoy it because we had to get to the conference. And the wind came up. Yep, took it right off. Thing was only 50 years old, so you could see through it in a few places. So I wasn't too worried about that. We just cut it off and then put the apparatus back up there, and it was fine. So no harm, no foul. Another thing that happened, though, this was kind of interesting. Yeah, Brian saying I had a muffler explode on my old 86 250, had to change my pants. I exploded the muffler on mine as I was backing up to the doors at the thrift store to load a couch. And these bunch of old women working in there, and man, boom, it went off as I was about 6 feet from the back door. And, swinging doors, and didn't break the windows. I was pretty glad of that, but scared them pretty good. And then, yeah, in that case, it's the ignition switch. The ignition switch on those goes. So there's a couple different detents, and one of them is to provide, to not ground out the coil. And when that fails and the coil grounds out for a minute and then comes back on, you're pumping all that fuel right through the exhaust system, and it boom. Yeah. So Thursday night, because we finally said nope, we're not going to go. It was like 9:30, and we'd be getting down there, close to midnight. I came in the house and almost kind of relieved that we weren't going to go Thursday night. Came in the house, and Jill said, "Hey, big storm coming, big storm." And I said, isn't that interesting that we couldn't make it? So down there in Lake Odessa at the fairgrounds, they had the tornado siren go off. There was tornadoes all over the place. I think there was 15 of them that touched down in Michigan. And all the people that were in the campground had to head into the men's room and sit and stand in the men's room while siren was going off. So it's a good thing we weren't there, because I would have been, nothing happened to the equipment down there. A lot of trees went down, and the power was out the whole time we were at Lake Odessa. But I would have been fretting about what was going on here while I was gone. And Jim and Frank were going to be taking care of everything here, which is for 2 days is kind of a first for them, with all the things that we have going on now. So Friday they had to head up chicken processing. First they had to milk first thing in the morning, and then chicken processing, get cleaned up, get the milk put away. Oh, they had to do milk run on Thursday night by themselves. And then Saturday they had to milk, and then just make sure all the animals were fed and everybody was watered, which they did a swimmingly good job. They kind of like it when we leave, even though they get saddled with all the work done, but they like it when mom and dad are gone. So it was good. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my overall feeling coming away from the conference. And I think sometimes when you go to something like that, you can say, oh, well, it was really informative, and I had fun, and I ate good food, and I hung out with cool people. Yeah, I did all those, and that's true. It was, and I would go back again just for that. I would go again just for that. Had a really nice time. Met some really nice people. A lot of networking, business networking. Passed out a lot of business cards, for what that's worth, which is good. I mean, you should always be prepared to do that if you're running a farm business. And yeah, that was all really good. But I think I was at sort of a little bit higher altitude looking down at the overall thing. Because if you go to a state like Missouri, for instance, small farms are thriving. They are thriving. But then you come to a state like Michigan, where we have like a really oppressive state government. They've oppressed these people for a long time and pushed these people to the point where they feel like they have to ask permission for everything. The small farms community is kind of only it's only the people who are risk takers, because and you hear it all the time. People are concerned about, well, and I even heard a guy say this. He said, well, I don't want to get in trouble. And I looked at him like, what do you mean get in trouble? What? He says, well, I mean, state. So just that statement right there is evidence to me that these people are misinformed by their leaders, right? And Department of Agriculture type people. They are misinformed greatly about their rights to farm, right? And then we have a Right to Farm Act, which is a law, But what the Right to Farm Act really does is it gives industrial agriculture, the people that spread manure and do a lot of other icky things, it gives them the right to infringe on other people in the name of farming. It gives them the right to pollute other people's environment, which is not good. And it shouldn't be that way, but the Right to Farm Act really doesn't benefit the small farmer. It really doesn't. All right, intentionals with us. Intentional homesteading. All right. So I got to see that and I got to feel that. And I think that's something that a small farms conference or a small farms gathering or homestead gathering, homestead conference, I think they all kind of fall under the same umbrella. I think that is going to be the pushback and the information avenue. It's going to, and it's going to be tailored to what goes on in this state, right? I think that every state should probably have it, or 5 of them, if they can, because there needs to be networking amongst people, and the strength in numbers and the strength in information and truth. A lot of truth was being told at this place, which was really good. So I came away from it inspired. I mean, I was the one that was asked to give an inspirational speech, and it was not hard for me to do that because I spent all day Friday talking with people, visiting with vendors, visiting with other with presenters, and just people. And I was inspired by what I heard from them about what they're doing. There was this one gal, I don't recall her name right now, I'm sorry, but she runs an outfit called the Chatty Goat, and real nice, a little very farm girlish, pretty, and had a lot of stuff laid out. And one of the things she had laid out was a goat hide. And I thought, well, that's inspiring, skinning a goat. And so I got to talking to her, and she said, oh no, we butcher all of our own animals. And I said, really? Tell me more. And she just was focused on there is no limit to where she will take what she's doing. So she milks, she makes soap, she collects fibers, I believe, and meat. And she even had a couple goats there that she was selling. It was pretty neat. And in the course of it, she said, well, I started butchering it because I had a really naughty goat and I couldn't find anybody to do it. And so I looked on the internet and decided I was going to do it. And she said, I really got hung up on the kill. And so she decided, of all things, to hold the goat down and with a knife cut its jugular vein. And I've never done that. I've never done that. And I'm looking at this young woman, girl, I guess. Not exactly a girl, but female, younger, probably 24. And I'm thinking, wow, you did that. And she said, yeah, look through this book. So she had a book of all these pictures. It was actually a children's storybook that she had made. And I'm looking through like, wow, you're really dedicated to this. And you're not going at this half speed. She was full speed, pedal to the metal. And I was impressed. So when I had to get up a Morgan, that's her name. Yep, Michelle Dupree. All right, Michelle. Thanks. When I had to get up and give an inspirational speech to everybody, I had all these thoughts. I didn't write anything down. I just didn't. And had all these thoughts in my head. And then when I got up in front of the crowd, and I guess there was 40, 50 people, something like that. If you ever do that, their energy hits you. It hits you because they're all looking at you like, okay, inspire us, right? And when that happened, it aligned my thoughts. And I said to Jill on the way home, did I deliver that properly? And she said, well, I was wondering if you were going to go into the weeds at one point, but you brought it back, and yeah, I think the message was consistent. Was I believe that you are stewarding the Creator's creation, and the answers to your problems and the questions to the problems you haven't even asked yet are all in you. They're all within you. And be very careful deferring to other people, because it just seems to put a block up. Like, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to ask somebody else what to do. Maybe they don't know either, but it seems to put a block up, and you cut yourself off from the answers that all you have to do is ask, what should I do here? And generally, it seems like the answers come. And this is something that I've had to learn over the years. And a lot of times it's because I'm sort of isolated and nobody around here knows any of these things, and I think I've explained that to you, like with Cece's hoof and things like that. So I was able to do that, and it felt like it was a pretty good speech. I felt pretty good about it. And then me and Jill went back to our camper. Well, no, actually, we sat there and talked with people until it was quite late. And then we went back to the camper. It was hot, sweltering hot. Not so much in the camper because there was a lot of wind coming through, but outside it was hot. It was in the 80s. And we weren't quite accustomed to that yet. So we got in the camper, and it was warm. And Jill went right to bed. She was wore out. I don't necessarily do that. I like to sit and wind down a little bit before I lay down, because if I don't, then I start to think too much. And I might wind up having to get back up, and I didn't want to do that. So I sat and read for a little while and did some more research. And then I went to bed, and no covers. It was that warm. And then during the night, I think about 4 a.m, I woke up cold. And because in the camper there's windows on both sides of the sleeping compartment, and the wind was coming through there, and the temperature dropped down into the 40s. So I woke up cold. So we pulled the comforter up and snuggled up against Jill, and I drifted back off to sleep again. Yep. So that was good. That was good. We got a chance to see how the car would function, and then there's talk about taking it on a long trip, and the long trip would be out to New Mexico when my son Keith graduates from his training, his tech school training, which is quite the thing. It really is. It's going to be quite the event, and kind of calculated the fuel and all that stuff, but plane tickets would be expensive too. And I shouldn't say hate. I don't find flying commercial as enjoyable as it used to be. It used to be kind of cool when I was in my 20s and 30s. Waitresses, the stewardesses were all women, and they were all pretty. That was part of the package deal. Stewardesses are pretty. But now it's like they beat the brush. No, you're too good looking, or no, we're going to have dudes, and we'll see if we can find some gay dudes, and it's just not what it used to be. And they're kind of nasty, and they don't serve peanuts anymore. They don't have good food anymore. It's just kind of icky, and you get delayed, and airlines are not what they used to be. I think DEI really screwed up. Plus, it doesn't appear to be as safe as it used to be. And I'm out of that industry, and it used to be very, very safe, but it doesn't appear to be as safe. And like, they don't have the best people in charge anymore. So I just soon drive. And, we found out last time when we were driving back from Texas, you can take a secondary route, and you're going to lose about a half hour time, but it's you on the road, nobody else, and you're driving a sane speed. Where expressways all the way, when we were going out there, it was 85 miles an hour, and you're in traffic that's all traveling 85 miles an hour. And if there's a car length in front of you, someone pulls in. It was insanity. And I don't care how used to that I get. I'm not going to do it anymore if I don't have to. So, yeah, Jill was looking at a secondary route out there, and it would take us a little bit longer, but who cares? We're max speed on the motorhome is about 55. That's where it seems to settle and feels good, holds onto the road pretty good. So I think that's what we would most likely do if we did it. It's 4,000 miles. Which, what's that? 4,000 miles is nothing really. And you might say, well, a 50-year-old motorhome. Well, let's consider aviation. I was working on B-52s that were built before I was born, and they're still flying. I'm out 21, and they're building spares until this year. Spare parts for those B-52s, and I think I heard that they're going to extend it to 2030. I think I heard that. So just because something is old doesn't mean, like with a motorhome, if you strip the motorhome part off of it, you're looking at an Econoline E350, right? A 1-ton chassis with a C6 transmission, and then a Dana rear end, which is a mainstay in transportation. There's probably more of those produced than, well, a lot of them produced, and they were a mainstay for a long, long time. Yeah, there's secondary systems that can go south, but they're not going to be showstoppers. So I'm quite sure that we would make it there and back. And the thing actually rides good. It rides, holds the road good. It's got roll up, roll down windows. It's got the little vent right there. If you want to smoke a cigarette, you can flick the ashes out there, or if it gets warm in the cab, you just turn it out and you get a nice cool stream of air. Air conditioning? No. It's too much to go wrong with that. I can live without air conditioning. But in the new vehicles, like my new truck, my 18, you can have the windows down and you'll get beaten to death, but not really cool off. Weird. And it doesn't have a vent mode. Yeah, I think it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Anthony Fauci's probably behind it. All right, so that was that. And it was a good time. I think that it needs to be continued. I told Mina, I think this one was better than the last one. Although the second day was cold. It was cold. It was down to 40-ish, and the wind was blowing and it was spitting. And people weren't prepared for it, where it was 80 the day before. So I think, and we're in buildings that are open, and you're sitting there trying to listen to something, and people are just cold. And yeah, so I think that drove a lot of people out. Kind of too bad. But there was a lot of neat things going on, and there was a guy that did a chicken processing demonstration that was really sharp. There's room for a lot more stuff, though. Definitely room for a lot more stuff. And I'm not by any means saying if you're from out of state, you can't come. That's not it. But I think for us that live in the state and we want to see small farms thrive, because all boats float higher when everybody does well, I think it is something that we need to say, personally, if there's something I can do to help, I think I want to do that. I want to do that. I think it's a good thing to do. So I'm gonna stay with it. That's it for that. One other observation. As I spoke with people, different people, just people that we sat and ate lunch with, or just random people that we run into and strike up a conversation with, it was more of the same of what I've told you guys about that I've been seeing, where people who had, I guess I call them straight jobs, I guess, I don't know. For me, the storyline picks up when I was a kid, and there was a commercial that was on, and it was a kind of a city guy that was eating a sandwich while he was interviewing a fella for a job. And the guy that he's interviewing, you don't see his whole presentation. You see him with a hat in his lap, and he's fiddling with the hat with his hands. He's got these gnarled up hands, hard-working man hands, and this hat. And then the hat happens to be like a tall hat, a top hat. And then they show a little bit of his face, and he's got a beard, and then a little bit of his head, and he's got scruffy hair and stuff. And as it goes on, they're backing away. And the guy that's doing the interview, he goes, the guy's got food hanging out of his mouth, and he's wiping his mouth. He's got a pinky ring on, and he's like, and no, have you got a chauffeur's license? And well, no, I don't have one of those. Have you got, well, you ain't going to go too far without that sheepskin, he says. And he's referring to, this is an ad, probably the ad council or something, saying that you all need to go to college. You all need to go to college. And then when they pan out from the guy, it's Abraham Lincoln. And as you know, you should know, Abraham Lincoln was a surveyor. He was a surveyor. But in today's culture, it's like, if you don't have an MBA, you don't have a master's, you don't have a PhD, well, you ain't nothing, But really, we're seeing a lot of people from that side of the world, the kind of the managerial class, they're punching out. They're saying, this isn't all it was cracked up to be. I want to live an international or an intentional life. I want to see the fruits of my effort. I want to be intensely involved in the things that I need to support my life at some, at some level. Some people keep going, and before you know it, they're mining their own salt and growing their own coffee trees. I'm not there yet, but you wait. So I saw a lot of those people. I had a very interesting encounter, extremely interesting encounter. I watch people and try to figure out what's their shtick. Well, they're beekeepers now, but you weren't always a beekeeper. What's your background? I try to do that. And there was this one woman. She looked to be 30. And the first time I saw her was on day one. She was pushing two little kids in a stroller, little kids, like a crawling kid, and then the next one up. So probably 15 months, and then maybe 2, something like that. And I saw her, and the way she was presenting herself, I thought, well, you didn't just fall off a turnip truck, And there was something about her that I recognized, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And good looking. And then the next time I saw her, she stood up from my presentation and did an about face and walked out. And I thought, oh, I must have said something. And so I was like, wow, okay. And then the next time I saw her was at the In Brief on Saturday morning. We got there, me and Jill were sitting in the stands hearing about what was going to go on, cold, and she wheeled her kids in and was stayed standing because the kids were strapped in. And I'm like, what is it that's familiar about her to me? There's something. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And I thought, yeah, but she's the one that got up and walked out on my presentation. So I'll leave it right there. And then she wound up sitting behind me in the fiber presentation. And every time that the lady that was doing the presentation would pass something around, it was handed to her, and then she would hand it to me. So I had to take it from her hand and smile and, hi, how are you? And then her kids were getting rambunctious because they weren't real interested in the whole thing. And the littler one, I thought it was a boy, but it was a girl, had flaming red hair. And I thought it was a boy, but it wasn't. And she was putting dirt on a chair, and who cares? So the kid was happy and putting dirt on the chair. And after it was over, I kind of helped her, knock the chairs off. And I said, wow, boys will be boys. And she says, oh, she's a little girl, actually. And I said, oh, well, very nice. You have nice looking kids. And then she goes, my husband just got out of the Air Force. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah. He's in training right now. He's going to be flying for UPS. And I said, oh, how long was he in? She said 10 years. And I was like, oh, that's halfway. That's of interest to me, why people would get out at 10 years. So we got to talking a little bit. And then she said, out of the blue, she said, yeah, he was born at Loring Air Force Base up in Maine. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, we went up there to visit the base. I said, really? I just went up to visit Loring. It's been closed down since 94, but people that were stationed at Loring, because of the rigors of Loring, it creates a place in your heart. I cannot explain it. It's crummy weather, black flies in the summer, wind in the fall, heavy winds, cold in the winter, like -12 almost every stinking day, and 210 inches of snow. Like so much that they shovel over it. Oh, I got a puppy. So, oh, here you go. So anyway, people that were stationed at Loring, and I was there for 7 years, it kind of makes a place in your heart. And so we got to talking, and come to find out her husband was flying KC-135s. And when we had KC-135s at Loring, it's a skunk. How did that happen? It kind of reminds you of home, don't it? This here is Oscar. Oscar. So come to find out, her husband was born there at the base hospital, and her father-in-law was somebody, I have his name, but I don't recall, is somebody that I might have known, but he was in a squadron that flew 135s, and we had a 135 that went down when I was there, and I think it forever changed me, and that's probably one of the reasons why I think of Loring all the time, is because of that crash. And anyway, I told her the story of the crash, and I've told you guys about it before. One of the men that was killed on that was a guy by the name of Lieutenant Colonel William Northcutt, and I in-process the base with him. I in-process. So in-processing is when you just get there, you show up Monday morning and you're in a classroom with everybody else that's coming to the base. And so it's all ranks, officers, enlisted, men, women. Wasn't a lot of women back then. Hold on, let me let him into the house. All right, here you go. You want to go out? Go ahead. So I in-processed with him, and the way the story went is I got there early. It was my second base, E4 at the time, which is a senior airman. And like, you're not the highest ranking guy in the world. And in comes a lieutenant colonel, comes walking in a flight suit. And I was the only one in the room. It's like a classroom. You're sitting at like high school desks, you know, the wraparound desks. And he comes in, and instead of sitting someplace far away from me, he sits right here, right next to me. And I just kind of greet him, you know, like customs and courtesies. Good morning, sir. And not really scared, but uneasy. You know, you got this officer sitting next to you, and he's pretty high ranking, lieutenant colonel. And he says, "How you doing?" And I said, "Good. How you doing?" Like that. It was more like he initiated a casual exchange, is what it was. Like, I'm not going to say, "Hey, what's going on, sir?" I'm not going to do that. "Good morning, sir. How are you today?" Something like that is what I would say. But he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I said, "Good." He says, "Where are you getting in from?" And I told him I just came in from Japan, Yokota. And he says, "Hey, I came in from Kadena." So, you know, we were on the same chunk of property, spent time at each other's base, never saw each other, but, and so in processing was 2 days. He sat in the same place the next day, and I sat in the same place, and we did talk, and he was very kind to me. You know, at that point in my career, it was mostly men, And there wasn't a lot of kindness going around. You know, you didn't make small talk with people. You didn't goof around because you're expected to be a pro, and there just isn't a lot of goofing around in a setting like that. So you just, good morning, how you doing? And then eyes forward, keep your mouth shut. That's it. But he wanted to kind of put me at ease and kind of welcome me more like to the Air Force. It's the way it seemed. And so 2 days of in processing with him. And when we left, we shook hands and, yeah, maybe I'll see you around. Yeah, I hope so. And never did until the day of the crash. And he was the aircraft commander of the crash. And I had got to the crash scene. I was on the crash recovery team. So they pull a few people from every duty section, and that's one of your additional duties. If there's a crash, you're the one that's going to go out, and they show you how to pick it up and how to look for things and all that stuff so they can figure out what happened. That's the reason. And it's not like we figure it out. We're just the ones that are walking along, and then you put a flag. Okay, there's a piece of insulation here, put a flag on it. Okay, here's a tooth. And then the experts come in and they figure out what happened. But I got to the crash site on a school bus, and as soon as I got there, somebody got on the bus and said, who's got 2.5 ton on their license? So when you're in the military, you have a military driver's license, and all the equipment that you're authorized or trained to operate is on your license. So if you have a 2.5 ton truck on your license, which we use a lot of them, it will be on your license. So I had it on my license, and therefore I'm authorized to go to the motor pool with orders and say, I would like a 2.5 ton truck, and they will give me a set of keys and say, here you go. So they put me in a pickup. We went back to the base, got a 2.5 ton truck, and then I drove back to the crash site. So I'm like 3 hours out, 3 hours back, 3 hours out again. So I'm whooped. And when I got there, the nose and the engines, the aircraft separated midair. Boom, big explosion past the wings, after the wings, boom, and separated the aircraft in two pieces. The wings, the engine, and the nose went over here, just over a rise. All we could see was smoke coming out of there. And then the tail was over here about 500 yards. And from where I was parked, it was probably 200 yards into the woods. And I was kind of sick to my stomach. I really didn't want to go over here where the smoke was coming from. But I'm at this crash site. There was nobody around. They had set up tents because people were going to be staying all night. And so I kind of walked around a little bit, and I didn't want to be standing there doing nothing, because then I can wind up getting asked to clean toilets or something. So I decided to walk over to the tail, and there was a security policeman standing there. And I said, so where is everybody? And he was like, I don't know, I just got here. I said, well, I'll go in there and see if I can find people to help. And he's like, have a good time, And so I go walking in right towards the tail, and it's a huge airplane. And that tail separated, and with the end that was separated was almost to the ground. It was hung up in the trees. It was almost to the ground. And it was huge, and it was hung up in the trees. This is over in New Brunswick, Canada. And there was old growth forest. There were trees in there that were massive. And it was creepy. It was creepy. And I'm walking through, and I start finding stuff. And it had not been identified. Like, they were all over at the front of the airplane because they were trying to get the bodies out, which there was nothing really left. Everybody was smashed, hamburgered, and then burned. So there wasn't much left. As I'm walking through, I start finding stuff. I find a broom, which would be on an airplane to sweep it out, just a whisk broom. I find some tie-down straps. I find a lunch. We used to call them bag nasties. They come in a box. It's a to-go box. You get at the chow hall. And it was open, and there was a Twinkie laying there and an apple and stuff. So it was creepy because I'd had to eat those damn things so much. And then the piece de resistance was a flight bag. There was a flight bag there, and all pilots and navigators, they carry a bag, a square leather bag with a handle on the top. They all carry them, and they have charts and other stuff. I don't know all what's in there, but they all carry them when they're going out to fly. And there was a bag there. And right on the top, there's a leather patch. And the pilots and navigators and crewmen, they wear a flight suit that's made out of Nomex, so it won't burn. I don't know how effective that is, and they have a Velcro thing right here with that leather patch goes on, and it says who they are, their rank, USAF, and a set of wings sometimes if you're a flying status. And they will take those and they will stick them. They'll have a spare and they'll stick it on their bag. So when I looked at that bag, there it was. Lieutenant Colonel William Northcutt. And I was like, holy smokes. And I was all by myself in this creepy environment, but I had enough wits about me to know he's not here. He's up there. He's up at the other crash site. And, but the tail of the airplane, there could be someone in that tail. But there wasn't, because when they're not, KC-135 is a refueling airplane. They refuel other airplanes in flight, B-52s in this case. So when they're not refueling and they're getting ready to land, the guy that is in the back, in this case, his name was Airman Cupp, C-U-P-P. He was up in the front of the airplane. So he wasn't back there either. But anyway, I related that story to her, and because her husband was born at that base and her father-in-law most likely knows a lot about that crash, probably knew Colonel Northcutt, probably, and many other people that I know. There was an immediate connection. And then she said, yeah, I was active duty too. I said, in the Air Force? And she says, yeah. I said, what'd you do? And she says, well, I was a captain and I worked for, I don't remember exactly what she said. I hadn't heard it before. It was some logistical thing. And I said, you go to the academy? And she says, yeah. And it's like, wow. And here we meet in Northern Michigan. I mean, there's a 20-year gap between us, at least. But still, there was that connection. So I said, I knew there was something about you. I just knew it. So that was cool. And she was there because her husband was at training, but they want to get into a homestead. And I guess they're going to be stationed up in Fairbanks, Alaska. So very, very cool. Just a very cool thing to run into somebody from that era of my life that is connected to it. And then this was good. This just goes to show the difference in this group of people. All right. So after that, Beth and Tommy DeClercq were going to be doing a discussion, kind of a presentation about welcome to homesteading. And they're going to relate stories about what they were doing. And I wanted to be there. I wanted to hear it because I'm kind of invested in what they're doing. I mean, I'm very much invested in what they're doing on several levels. And so it was really good. I was sitting and I was just drinking it in. And there was a couple kids in the back that were really acting up. And I looked back and it was that same woman. And her kids were just really unhappy. They were not into the presentation. And I sit there thinking, you know, I really should go back there and ask her if I can relieve her. But I don't know, some strange guy walking up saying, I could take your kids for a walk. Just is a little, it shouldn't be, but it kind of is. But I thought she needs to hear this. She needs to hear what Tommy and Beth are saying more than I do. And so I walked back and I said, hey, I can push them around for a while you take this in. And she said, would you? And I said, sure. And at first it felt a little funny. And I stayed really close, you know, to that building, just going around in circles with those little kids. And then I went over to the vendor area and pushed through and stopped and talked to a few people, let the kids look at the goats, and there was some little sheep there and stuff. And there was people that I knew over there. And, oh, these are your grandkids? I said, no, they're not my grandkids. Whose kids are they? I said, somebody that I just met about a half hour ago. What? Yeah, but that's the way it is in that community, in the military community. It really is that way. I remember one time I was at the Burger King in Caribou. That's the town there. This is a cool story. And there was another military member, a female, that I believe she worked at personnel, right? And she was a sergeant. I was an airman. I was out of uniform. She had her uniform on. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. We couldn't go out to eat in our uniforms back then. So she must have not had a uniform on, but I recognized her. And she had four kids, four little kids. All of a sudden, one of them wets their pants and it's dripping on the floor. And I'm looking at her and she just looks at me and she says, will you watch my kids for a minute? And I said, sure. I was sitting there with Kyle, and it was just me and Kyle, me and my oldest son. And he was then, at that time, he was like 3 or 2, maybe. Yeah, 3. And I said, sure. And so she was gone for 15 minutes and she just left her children with me. She obviously knew I was another military member probably because of my haircut and stuff. And when she came back, she just said, oh, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. I said, no problem. But it made me feel like trusted, you know, like trusted. And I went on from there. I mean, it was, and then another time, me and Kyle were at this lake called Long Lake. And it was quite pretty, but there was a place you could get the boat in. And on this day, there was quite a few people there. I'm thinking like 15 people there, which is a lot. There's not big crowds up in northern Maine. And I had launched my boat. It was really primitive boat launch. And it was just a rowboat with a little 10 horsepower motor on the back. And me and Kyle were out cruising around, and then we were fishing. He got bored, and then we just pulled it into the beach, and he was playing in the sand and all that stuff. And this lady comes racing over to me, a civilian, and she says, my husband fell off the boat and we can't find him. Can you help us look? And I said, yeah, sure. So I had a boat with a motor on it. And so I really couldn't take Kyle with me because if I had to get out of the boat, so there was another military family there. I did not know them. And I said, can you watch my son? I got to go help these guys out. And they were like, sure. It was a husband and wife. And I didn't give it a second thought, not a second thought. And I was out there for an hour and a half looking for this guy. They never did find him. They found him 2 weeks later when he finally took on a little air. So it was a dark thing. And, but when I got back, I said, hey, thanks a lot, you guys. They said, oh, no problem. No problem. And I think they were getting ready to leave, but they stayed. And it was that was the closeness of that base and that lifestyle. Because I'm telling you, when you got there, they tell you, yeah, I hope you don't have a social life because we work 12s, 6 days. So you're working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and your rotation may not be on the weekend. It may be Tuesday. That's your day off. And on your days off, what do you got? Dental appointment, this appointment, that appointment. It's not really days off, which is probably good because there wasn't much to do there because the snow was deep. And because there wasn't much to do, it's like any night of the week, the base theater that you could get in, I think for $1 and see a movie, and kids got in for 25 cents. The place would be a good sized crowd there. And popcorn and a pop and stuff, because there wasn't anything to do. There really wasn't. And when it was blazing cold and the snow up around your keister, it was just, and so people got together. I mean, I used to eat over people's house. I'd have people over to my house. It was really a fun thing, even though the mission was hard. It was a very hard mission. At the time, we had a nuclear alert mission. So we launched 3 airplanes every day with a full load. And they would be relieved before they landed. They were relieved by 3 other airplanes, and they would go and fly a long mission, 24-hour mission. And it was different places that they went, and they had nukes on them. And we did it. There was another base that did it, 2 other bases that did it, or 3 other bases that did it. So at any time, we had 12 airplanes in the air, Air Force wide, full of nukes. So to make that happen and keep those airplanes so they can take off and land and have fuel on them and take the weapons out of these ones and put them in these ones, it was just buzzing. And it's snowing, it's cold. In the summertime, black flies. You never seen anything like it. And all the while you're thinking, my life is slipping away from us, is from me. I spend all of my time here doing this. And I did it for 7 years. And where do I go when I want to visit a military base? Loring. Yep. And I will go there again. I'm sure of it. I think we'll take the camper up there and camp on the base. And I will just walk around that base and get bit by black flies and just reminisce about it. Watch the sun go down. Yeah. Yeah, it was quite a place. Quite a place. There's 10,000 people on that base, right? All doing the same thing. All right. Well, that was that. And I met quite a few other people there that were from other career fields that farming was going to be their second career. And yeah, pretty cool. So let me go back and read Who's here? Rudy Finney. Hello, everyone. Central Lower Peninsula in the house. Central Lower. So that would be, this is the Lower Peninsula, right? And then some of Michigan is like this, the Upper Peninsula. You got to go across a 5-mile bridge to get there. It's called the Mighty Mac, the Mackinac Bridge. Some people think they should change it because Mackinac is a Native American, and it seems to be, some people think it's disrespectful to name a bridge after Indians. Yeah, I don't see it, but anyway. So that's the Upper Peninsula, and I live on the Lower Peninsula. Peninsula. Okay. Central Lower. So, Rudy, you must be near me. I'm here. You must be here. Where are you, Rudy? Tell me where you're at. It'd be kind of interesting. Brian Jacobs with us. International is with us. Just me. Good evening. Michelle Dupree. Love Morgan. Her goat milk lotion is the best. Okay, so it's Morgan. I hope she comes and visits sometime. She was real interesting. I met her husband too. Nice family. And Michelle Dupree. I wonder if I met you there. It would be bad if we talked and I didn't get your name, but no one had name tags on. That, we should change that. Okay, Shadowing the Desert Stray. I wanted to tell you the Mangalitsa I just processed was 640 at 20 months. 640. Wow. 20 months. So nearly 2. Wow. I'd be interested to know how you fed and what you fed. That'd be kind of interesting. Yeah. On the internet, someone will say something who deems themselves to be an expert on Mangalitsa, and they'll say, well, they grow slower. And then it gets echoed and it gets, oh, they don't grow at all. You know, it gets, they up the ante every time. Oh yeah, they don't grow. They grow in reverse. They actually get small. I don't see that. I think they grow just fine. Just me. Do you sell pork rinds? Absolutely. Absolutely. Keith says, no, wait a minute. We lost power here too. Wow, you did. We didn't here. Oh, and my wife contradicts me. She says, we don't. Just me. In the fall, you can get pig skin and exact instructions to make your own. Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought that's what she meant. Do you sell pork rinds? Well, skins, but you got to do the cook on it. Now the puppy wants to get back in. The ghost. Mark's doing roll call. Yeah. Present. All right. Roll call. David Duncan's with us. And that's an affirmative there, Dave. Still getting bread. Puppy's trying to get in this door now. Michelle says, we went last year, but didn't make it this year. You're doing a good job putting it together. I didn't put together. I really didn't. I think we put a little bit of weight behind it, you know, but I didn't put as much weight behind it as I could have. And that was just because I was distracted and busy and all that stuff. But I'm going to put more weight behind it. Hope to go back next time. Seriously, community is everything. That's a true statement right there. That is a true statement because all of those minds unleashed can do tremendous things. And I think there's a conscious effort to quell that entrepreneurship, that creativity, that communal creativity. I believe there's a conscious effort to do that. And that's a shame in this country. That is a shame. plus other natural, okay, shadowing the desert, organic alfalfa and alfalfa and commercially created pig feed. Okay, cool. Plus other natural vegetarian. Boars, no castration. Ooh, amazing flavor and smell. All manure composting biweekly. Yeah, now that's a controversial issue right there. When I mean, it's not for me because I know what I'm going to do, right? But people ask a lot, well, do you have to castrate the boars? And if they ask me, I say yes, because we're in the butchering business too. And we butcher um, a lot of pigs. And I've butchered many boars. And when I first got into Mangalitsa, I was told, oh, no, you don't have to. They're a heritage breed. You don't have to castrate them. They're fine. And the first one that we did, I knew that smell very well because I had an experience with a really big boar back in Montana at our first homestead. He was really big. I was doing some of my own butchering back then, but my mentor, Dan Isaacson, said, with a boar, you're better off just turning it all into sausages and pepperonis, or else it's going to stink. So I took his advice, and he made it into some really nice meats. When I got home from work, and this was about a month later that Jill had picked it up. When I walked in the house, there was a familiar smell, and it wasn't good. And when I walked up into the kitchen, she had this beautiful plate out with all arranged different meats, and I could smell it. And then when I put it to my face, it was just it was just urine-y, campfire, urinating on a campfire smell. It's just, that's what it smells like to me. And I called Dan and I said, did we do something wrong here? And he said, did you get that boar's blood on your hands? And I said, I did. I wasn't supposed to, because we were supposed to load it in a trailer. But he wouldn't go in a trailer, and he was big. He was probably 800 pounds. And so I called Dan. He said, just shoot him and bring him up. And so I did. I shot him, and I bled him, and I got the blood on my hands. And the blood smelled like urine, campfire, peeing on a campfire smell. And so he said, Dan said, you will forever taste that in pigs that have not been castrated. And sure enough, I mean, it was years later. We had all this meat. All right, we got all this meat from Dan Isaacson, and I couldn't eat it. And so it didn't even smell good when you were cooking it in the house. It smelled like somebody peed in the frying pan. So we wound up giving it away to people that wanted it. And we said, hey, it's not for us, but if you want it. And I gave these really nice summer sausages or salamis away. And then I went to several years later, must have been 3. I went to a church potluck. Love church potlucks. And there was some beautiful salami on the table. Oh, this could be great. So I took some of it. I got back to my place. I'm wanting to try that first. The pig's name was Gordy. And I picked up that piece of salami, and I got it about this close. And I was like, this is Gordy. Jill, this is Gordy. Smell it. Yep. So I couldn't eat it. I still can't. And when our boars get really big, and we're going to change out the sows, we're changing out the boars at the same time, because there's a difference in size that's not conducive. We have made the decision that we're not going to castrate them. They've done well by us, and that's a cruel thing to do, I think, to an adult pig like that. So we do not do that. I have done it. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. So what we do now is we just shoot them and butcher them and set up bags, 10-pound bags, and then put in whatever in each bag, and that gets a tie wrap on it and frozen for the dogs. Dogs got to eat too. So they don't go to waste, but we don't eat them. We don't eat them. So my recommendation is, if you like that flavor or you don't detect that flavor like I do, then go for it. Then don't castrate them. But as soon as you get one that has that flavor, yeah, I think it's over. I think it's over. Boars, no castration. Amazing flavor and smell. We know a lady out in Maine who has customers that are ethnic something or other, Russians or something. They're Slavs. They're not like Mexicans or anything. And they like that flavor. They like it. So, no boar taint. Interesting. We've had a few intact boars that didn't have taint, but when they do, yeah. No taint in it at all. Taint. Taint? That's a weird word, isn't it? Taint. That's a major plus because we eat the mountain. Oh, we tried that too. We tried that. The Rocky Mountain oysters, we tried that on pigs. No, I won't try that again. Any problem with roundworms, etc., in your pigs? No. No, I won't say that we've never had them. But, when you have them, occasionally you just see one out there. And they're pretty distinct. And I got pretty good eyesight, so I see them. And I do kind of look around for them, and you'll find them in their manures. You'll see them in their manures. But I don't put them under the microscope. If I don't see adults, I don't worry about it because I figure they're part of the ecosystem too. And we are butchering our own, so we would see them as well. So no, we don't have a problem, but we are feeding biochar, and I do rotate them. They don't stay on the same patch of ground. They're on a patch of ground for probably a month, maybe, and then they're moved, just because we're always following whatever crop is in, with the exception of deep winter, and then we don't move them then, because I'd just be moving them from one snowy pen to another snowy pen, and there's no point in that. Shadowing desert stray, just use diatomaceous earth in the feed. Okay. Yep. Isaiah cooks them up and everyone likes them except Rebecca. Ooh. I am surprised. I think they're gross. They smell like the urinal down at the subway, right? It seems to help them moving. Yeah. I know what they say about their eggs, how they can lay dormant, but I think they can lay dormant, but if they lay out in the sun, they bake. And if it's, below freezing, I don't know a worm that can take that, but, I don't know everything, but we don't have problems with them. So, okay. Well, there you go. That was a fun show tonight. I enjoyed talking to you guys. I think I'm on kind of a fun hangover from the weekend. But we do want to let you know that Tribe Day is coming up. We are going to do Tribe Day this year. And I think it was never really up in the air, but my enthusiasm to do it was not where it is right now. I think it's important to do Tribe Day. I think it's important for this community to do that. And Tribe Day here is somewhat like the Mitten Homestead Conference, although we're on a private property, but people camp. We open the farm up afternoon on Friday, and this is the weekend after the 4th of July. So people start rolling in at noon, setting up their camps, and then we eat together Friday night, have fun, campfire, walk around, swim, do all that stuff. And then Saturday we have a couple of people that come and brief us on things, tell us about, different things, uh, soil health. There's several things to choose from. That's kind of up in the air at this point. We might have the fiber lady come out. I'd love it if she came out. It'd be fun to have the chatty goat lady come out. That would be fun, even though I'm not a big goat lover. But we'll see what happens. Either way, we learn things and we get to hang out and eat good food. We'll probably roast. I don't know if we will roast a pig. I don't know if I'm going to have any that are going to be big enough or small enough. We'll see. Maybe we'll have a goat roast. That would be fitting. That would be really cool. I got two beauties that would be perfect. And just hang around, and we're going to do some fun kid things too. Nature walks, and going to have a gun range set up so we can shoot some 22s. I think that'll be kind of fun. And, various things. Everybody has fun. Everybody has fun. There's very few fist fights, and very few women are, grabbing each other by the hair or anything. Like, very few. Just a good time to be had by all. And maybe we'll have an inspirational speaker. I don't know. All right. But if you want to come to that, Jill's going to limit it to 50 adults. Like, we can't open it up to a massive showing because you kind of lose the magic, when there's way too many people. Then people are waiting in long lines and stuff like that. We really don't want that. So we're going to limit it to 50 adults, and however many children come with those 50 adults. So you got to get your reservation in, and no fooling around. We're doing things now where you pay up front with none of this. I want to come, and then Aunt Susie dies, so you can't make it. There's no more of that. Everything is going to be paid in full. So if you speak for a seat, you're paying for a seat. Because if you don't come, we could have sold that seat to somebody else. We're going to do that with Hog Harvest as well. It's going to be paid in full on registration, because we've been tried to be nice about that and say, well, $100 reservation deposit, but then the day of, when people are going to be making their, bringing it up to speed, they don't show. And it's like, we're out. We had 2 people that didn't show last time. So we were out $1,300 on those seats. We still have to do the class because we did have 5 people that did show up, but the class is designed for 12. And the 2 that didn't show kind of really changed things a little bit. That kind of irritated me. So I said, from now on, it's paid in full. You're going to have to pay it anyway. So, I mean, if there's extenuating circumstances and you call and you plead to Jill, I'm sure she'll cut you some slack. But I'm not cutting any slack. And if somebody doesn't show, I'm taking it out of Jill's hide. All right, I'm going to get going. So that's coming up. The Anyone Can Farm Tribe Plus is something that you can take advantage of. And I think people are doing very well with it. I think it's productive, and it's going to continue. This is what it amounts to is consulting. If you pay for somebody who is seasoned and successful in small farms to come to your farm, me, to consult with you on what you ought to do, or consult with you on what you think you want to do, it's expensive. So to get me there and to pay me and get me back home, it's expensive. I'll just say I do it, but it is expensive. If you want me on the phone personally for an hour, it's $100. I'll do it. But I know that's tough. For Tribe Plus members, we meet every other Wednesday, and tomorrow night is going to be that night. And you got me on a Zoom call. And plus, you have the other members that are there, right? So if there are questions about your homestead, you have an idea and you just want to run it past me and the group, you can really nail down the process that you're wanting to do and avoid the pitfalls that are just there. Oh, I think I want to do this. Well, I'm a guy that's tried that, and I can tell you why I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that here. I did it, and this is the way it worked out, and this is why it didn't work out. But you may say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And I say, good. I don't have everything figured out, and maybe that's something that I tried in the early days, and I didn't know enough to make it right. But that community consulting, I think, is really important, and I run it. So I kind of limit the conversation and try to keep it going in the direction of farm. Sometimes, no, everybody gets their questions out, and then somebody say, hey, what do you think about Kamala Harris? And then, we'll talk about her for a little while or whatever. It could be anything. It could be anything, really. We do talk about alternative things and planting and livestock and systems, water systems, fence systems, land, states, soils. We talk about it all. And I don't think we know everything, but between us, we know quite a bit. So if you want to be in Tribe Plus, it costs you about what a cup of coffee costs you per day to be in it. It is a place where you go, you sign up, you pay yearly, and there's a lot of other perks. Be the most productive and the most call on Wednesday nights. And when we say it's a 1 hour Zoom call, that's what we say. But most times it winds up being nearly 2 or sometimes over 2, because we just get to having fun and being professionals. So, okay, I'm over by a half an hour now, so I'm going to get going. Appreciate everybody coming by. Get your nose to the grindstone, put the pedal to the metal. Now is the time to be doing that. Now is the time. And remember, anyone can farm. Good night.